And I told myself, I will never do sales when I get out of college. I want to reintroduce sales to you. I've been in sales over a decade plus. The way I coach my clients and following up, it's called a 2-2-1.
Customer says, I want to get other quotes. How do you recommend handling that?
Objection. There's only 4 main objections. Time, price, belief. Yeah, Joe Schmo got me done at $8,000. Is your solution speaking louder than their needs?
What's gonna be the key strategies for creating presentations?
Don't say estimate, don't say quotes, say menu.
What message do you actually send them?
Rapport is king. Be a doctor of HVAC.
Hello everyone, what's up? Yash this side and welcome to the episode 5 of the HVAC Hotshots podcast. I'm your host Yash from HVAC10x.com, a result-driven marketing agency for HVAC companies. Our guest today is Ariel Robinson, a home service sales coach from mysalesalight.com. Today we'll be mainly talking about objections and closing in the HVAC industry. Ariel, first of all, really thanks for coming up on the podcast and taking out the time from your very busy schedule. I know that, and I actually really appreciate that. Let's
thank you.
Let's start with yourself. Tell me about yourself, your journey and how you got into the industry and all those things.
Yeah, so real interesting story, not to be too long or too long-winded on it, Yash, but so I grew up in South Florida, born and raised playing basketball, and through basketball it taught me a lot of different things. I even had a chance to play professionally overseas as well. But in the midst of that, I was in college, and during the summer I worked a job at a car dealership, right? And I told myself, I will never do sales when I get out of college. I told myself that. Said after basketball's done, after school's done, I'm not doing sales. And the reason behind that is because I was introduced to sales in the incorrect light, in the wrong manner. I was taught that sales is just pushing things on people that they necessarily don't want, right? And that's what I thought sales was. And I said, you know what? If this is what sales is, I want no part to do with it. Fast forward, obviously, I'm in sales, sales coach, co-owner of Sales Elite. So obviously my mindset has shifted, but let me speak about what has shifted there is that, sales is serving, and really selling is serving. And if selling is serving, sales is just really good customer service. So my part of my why, I'll talk about that, and I'll tell you how I got into the HVAC industry with sales coaching. But part of my why is to reintroduce sales to as many folks that want to hear me. Techs, owners, salesmen, whoever wants to listen. I want to reintroduce sales to you because we've been bamboozled. We thought that sales is just pushing items or products or services on people, but that's not what it is. Because selling, the simplicity of it is serving. And sales, the simplicity of it is just really good customer service. How can I uncover that need and then provide a solution? Now, real quick, so the way I got into HVAC industry, it was really organic. I was at a really, really good friend's home, and we were just talking about his business. He has an HVAC business, very successful. And I've been in sales over a decade plus, and sales coaching, sales management for over a decade plus. And he was just telling me a little bit about his sales process. And something that stuck out to me was this, is that he wasn't following up with the customers after going over an estimate, or even just leaving an estimate. He wasn't even following up with the customers. So what we did, we just set a strict rule of following up. I call it a call cadence, or the follow-up formula. I wanted him to contact that customer at least 5 times after reaching out to them until he gets in contact with them. So for example, if he calls the first time, no answer, he's going to call him a second time. But you're switching up the times you're giving that customer a call. Long story short, gave him a call, and he was able to continually close, and his closing rate went from, I think it was like at the time it was really low, it was at 35, went to 45 for just implementing that. And in that moment, it kind of dawned on me. I was like, oh wow, like maybe I can have an impact in the HVAC industry. And then a couple years later, Sales Elite was born, and now I am coaching, training clients all over the U.S. HVAC sales training. So I love it. It's fun. I like getting people better. I love helping people.
Makes perfect sense, and it's pretty inspiring, hearing this from you. I wouldn't waste any further time of yours, and let's get directly into the questions part. Starting with what you previously said, you talked about your following a process and stuff like that. Could you please throw some more light on that? What's the exact process and what's the formula that you just said? Could you please tell more about that?
Yeah, definitely. No, great question. So, the way I coach my clients and following up, it's called a 2-2-1. So, all that means is that you're going to get 5 chances to get in contact with this customer. So, for example, let's say that you leave an estimate on a Wednesday. Before you leave the estimate, and let's say you weren't able to close it, you did objection handling, you weren't able to close it right there, you need to set the expectation with that customer. When are you going to follow up with them? You're not letting the customer tell you, but you're telling the customer, hey, I'll give you a call Thursday at 10. Does that sound good? Boom, it sounds good. So this is going to initiate the 2-2-1. So let's say you call them Thursday at 10, they don't pick up. You're going to call them later again that afternoon or maybe that evening, maybe around 4:30. That second call, what you want to do is you want to leave a voicemail. I never coach leaving a voicemail on the first call because you want to pique some curiosity. Who's calling me again, right? Because they may pick up that second time. And let's say they don't pick up the second time, the next morning, which is Friday, what are you going to do then? You're going to not call at the same time in the morning that you called on Thursday. So therefore, you're going to switch up and have call cadence, and you're going to switch up that time that you're calling. So you may call a little bit earlier. You may call at 9 o'clock. And then the next phone call that day, you're not going to call the same time that you called on Thursday afternoon or Thursday early evening. So you're switching up that time that you're calling as well. And then on that third day, you just give them a phone call, and then if they're not picking up after 5 times, there's something that's broken in our sales process and something that's broken in our sales skills that we weren't able to connect fully with that customer, and that's why they are just pretty much, lack of better term, swerving us. They're just avoiding us. Does that make
Interesting.
sense?
Yeah, definitely. Makes perfect sense.
Awesome.
This was the perfect answer to start this podcast with. And yeah, shifting approach a bit, getting into hiring the right person. How do you anticipate whether someone would be good at sales or not? As I said, this is more of a hiring question or finding the potential within someone rather than the sales
Sure.
itself.
Yeah, no, great question. So in terms of somebody being good at sales, right? That is, how can I say this? That's an interesting way to put a label on that, good at sales, because my perspective is, if you're coachable, if you're willing to take risk, you can be good at sales. So even if you're like let's say in HVAC, you're a tech and you're introvert and you don't really like to talk, if you're coachable, if you allow me to coach you and you listen and apply what I'm teaching you, guess what? That introvert that you have, you can still keep that. However, I'm gonna need you to build rapport. I'm gonna need you to utilize questioning. I'm gonna need you to utilize communication, and I'm gonna teach you how to actually close customers. So, what makes somebody good at sales, to answer that, is if they're coachable, and then also if they're willing to listen. If they're coachable, willing to listen, and willing to apply exactly what I'm teaching them, they're going to be good at sales. But also, the other side of that, what does help is somebody that is just naturally a people person, somebody that's naturally a people person. That's some intangibles that you can't teach. You're either born with it or not. When I started out with sales, I was not good in sales. But you know what? I learned to be better. I learned what worked and what didn't. I was very attentive. I was coachable. So again, just coachability and willing to apply what you're learning.
Makes perfect sense. Now, diving into sales, and here's my first question. What do you consider the most crucial KPIs for measuring HVAC sales performance? And I know this would differ a lot based on which level the company is at, but if you could give a generic answer to this, would be great.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, and it's probably a cliche answer, but I would say this: how many estimates or menus are you producing, and how does that match up against the closing? How many are you closing in terms of KPIs? Because if you're going to set up some KPIs for somebody on a monthly basis, a weekly basis, a daily basis, And especially with HVAC, we want to know how much estimates are we getting at least to the table? Are we getting to the living room to make our presentation? That's to me, that's number one because what does that do? If you think about it like baseball or you think about it like cricket, right? You want to swing. You want to swing.
True.
So it's the same way with HVAC. You want to get to the table or get to the living room, and that's where you're swinging. Now, if you're able to connect or not, that's the skills that we're honing in on. That's the skills I hone in with my clients. We need to get you better at word track, word path, tonality, emotional intelligence in the midst of presentation, right? So I would say estimates, and then secondary. I know you didn't ask the secondary, but secondary would be closing percentage. How are you closing? Are you a closer?
Makes sense. Now, talking about the HVAC tech side, how should HVAC techs prepare before entering a customer's home? What etiquettes or, sales tactics should they keep in mind when they are actually, going to someone's home?
Yeah, so I would say this, Yash, and I talk to Chris a lot. We're becoming good friends, and I actually got this from him. He calls it the mental end zone, and I just abbreviated it, and I call it MIZ, MIZ, the MIZ. You want it before you step into that customer's home. And what is the MIZ? It's the mental end zone. It's the recalibration of your mind. Because guess what? If you're in sales, if you're a selling tech in HVAC, you may have just been on a sales call and you may have just, I don't know, got a few no's, or you didn't make a sale. So what do you need to do? Or you just may be having a bad day or a bad week in life, and you have to recalibrate your mind. And what I started doing with my clients, I help them build out sales processes. Their phase zero or their step zero is the MIZ, is the mental end zone. You need to get your mindset right. You need to recalibrate your mind. And that's something that's something we really hone in on is mindset training, because you can be the most talented salesman, the most talented selling tech, but if your mindset is not there, if you have a weak mind, if your mind's not fortified, Yash, you know what's going to happen? The minute that you face adversity, you're going to fold like a piece of paper. So it's so important that we have a fortified mind. So that first step before you knock on the door, before you go in a customer's home, recalibrate your mind, get in the mental end zone, and stay focused. And I also call that the mental edge. You want to keep your mental edge before you get into that sales call.
Makes
If
sense.
that makes sense.
Definitely. Gotcha. Now, getting all into objections, because I really want our conversation today to be driven towards that. I'll be throwing a lot
Let's
of
talk about
objections to you from a customer's POV, and would like you to answer as a comfort advisor or a sales tech. I would want
Sure.
you to overcome the objection as you would in real life, so anyone watching this could get some pointers or maybe could
Sure.
add that as their sales script, right? So
Sure.
I'm sure you have heard this one before. A customer says, "I want to get other quotes." How do you recommend handling that?
Yeah, no, and let me frame that like this, right? Because objection, there's only four main objections, four main ones. So our listeners, I want you guys to understand, there's only four main objections, but they may mask themselves in a different undertone or a different face, right? So first objection is going to be time, right?
Yep.
They need time to think about it. Second objection is going to be price. Third objection is going to be spouse. And then fourth objection is going to be belief, right? So repeat your question again, Yash.
Sure. A customer says to you, "I want to get other quotes as well." How do you recommend handling that?
Yeah, so guess what? They need to get other quotes. That is a number four. That's a belief issue. They don't believe in what you're offering. They don't see the value. So the way that you offer it, and I have a formula for that as well, I call it RC2. It's restate, clarify, close. Restate, clarify, close. And all that is you can tell that customer, "Hey, Mr. Mrs. Customer, I completely understand you want to get other quotes." Boom, that's the restating part. Now you want to clarify, right? And you have to set yourself up for the clarification. You'll say, "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, when I typically hear that from my customers, that's telling me that I didn't do a good enough job showing you all the value in this offer, or I didn't do a good enough job explaining everything. And I just want to just give me some time. I want to just go over everything we just went over again, just to make sure you're fully understanding. And then you want to clarify, then you want to close. And if I'm hearing you correctly, if I'm able to present everything in a clear manner, will you be willing to move forward? Right?
Yeah.
So, and guess what? If they tell you no, we're actually not ready to move forward, that objection that they just told you, guess what? That can be what's called a smoke screen, right? They just pop some smoke just to get out of your face. That can be a smoke screen, and that cannot be the true objection. And here's the thing with all objections, it's the word track is different, yes, but the formula stays the same. You want to restate, you want to clarify, and then you want to close.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense, and that's really amazing to hear. But what I'm exactly trying to get here is, let's say someone's hearing us, and obviously there are 4 or 5 main ones that often people actually say. So what I exactly want from our conversation today is, yes, whatever strategies you said, that's crazy gold. But if someone's watching us today, he could just take out your script, boom, put that out in their sales script, if that makes sense. So I'll be throwing some more.
Yes, and I'll just put it like this. I don't
Sure.
ever teach.
Sure, please go ahead.
Okay, let's go. Yeah, let's go.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I was gonna say I never teach scripts, right? I just always teach blueprints.
makes sense, makes perfect sense.
Yeah, you always want a blueprint, you never want a script. And the reason behind that, Yash, you don't want to seem disingenuous. But yeah, again, so if somebody was to tell me, hey, I need to get 3 more quotes. Hey, customer, I completely understand. You need to get 3 more quotes. A lot of my customers do that, but when they actually do that, Mr. Customer, this is what I've noticed, that I have not given you enough value. I haven't answered enough questions. I'm sorry that I haven't done that. Give me another chance. I want to just review this estimate with you again. I want to show you in totality exactly what we're going to do. And again, from my past experience, typically when I go over these things with this customer, again, they're ready to move forward. Would you say that's the same for you? And boom, you just shut up. And from there, they're going to say yes, or they're going to say no. And then based on what their answer is, you're going to know if that was the true objection, or you're going to know that actually that was a smoke screen and there's something else that I need to uncover.
Makes perfect sense.
And did that answer your question more directly?
Yeah, this was much better, and I really appreciate that.
Okay.
You said
Yes.
that there are mainly 4 objections. You already talked about one, value, and let's talk
Sure.
about the other 3 as well. Talking mainly about price, because that's one of the most common objections
Sure.
anyone would hear, right? So
Yeah.
let's say I'm a customer,
Yes.
and I tell you, hey Ariel, you are too expensive, or I can get the same system or service cheaper elsewhere. What would you say here?
Yeah, so again, I'll frame it like this and then I'll answer your question directly. So, not every, and I think owners are going to realize this, right? Not every customer is your customer, especially when it comes down to price, because they may say like, yeah, I got Joe Schmo HVAC over there. He's getting me done, full system, duct work, everything done for $8,000 on a train unit. So we have to realize that. But in an event that if a customer tells you that, guess what you're going to do? You're going to do the same exact thing. You're going to restate, you're going to clarify, close. Hey, Mr. Customer, I understand that the price, maybe it's a little higher than what you expected, and I completely understand that. Our economy right now is just a lot of things going on. But if I'm hearing you correctly, here's a clarification part. If I'm hearing you correctly, if you're at a price point that you're more comfortable with, you're willing to move forward, boom, let the customer answer that question. It's either going to be yes, or it's going to be, and if the customer says yes, okay, tell me more about that price point. Because right there, they can tell you, yeah, they may give you insight on other quotes they got, and they may tell you like, yeah, Joe Schmo got me done at $8,000, and your estimate may be $12,000, and your lowest offer may be maybe 9,000, but it's still not comparing apples to apples. So that may not be your customer. But in an event that it is, you're able to still uncover that true objection. Because what's the point of getting through objections is to find out what the core objection is. What is the true objection? Because again, customers like to throw smoke screens. Does that answer that? The word track? Yeah. Is that okay?
Yeah, definitely. Now talking a bit more about pricing. I have myself seen, few companies are gonna charge you much higher than the rest others,
Sure.
right? They do charge somewhat a premium, and yet their closing percentage is really good, right? So how
Yeah.
are they able to do that? I get it, they are able to actually showcase the value that they are adding to the customer. But exactly how? Could you please walk us through that process, and how could a company, or how could someone just getting into the industry could have that leverage and could establish somewhat, a USP in this industry?
Yeah, no, great questions. Talking about a company that has premium pricing and high closing percentage, obviously they know what they're doing. But just from what I've seen, right, in the industry, this is what I've seen is that if you're not setting yourself up for that presentation, right? Because closing is just one part of the whole sales process. There's so many more factors in the beginning before you get to that table that sets you up for that presentation. There's a lot of different factors. How well did you build rapport, right? Did you build enough rapport? Because what does rapport do? It breaks the barriers down of that customer. It lowers your nerves, lowers the customer's nerves, so you guys can speak freely. They're able to hear what you're saying. Did you uncover the core needs? Did you conduct questioning? Did you find out exactly what this customer is looking for? Because is your solution speaking louder than their needs? Because if your solution is speaking louder than their needs, you have yourself a sale. If their needs are speaking louder than your solution, then you do not have yourself a sale.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that lead up to the actual sitting at the table, sitting at the living room, and closing. Now, here's a tidbit that needs to be considered. And this is what I see a lot. A lot of HVAC companies would not, I call the estimate, I call it a menu, right? On-call air, house call pro, service titan, all the CRM, they build you out an estimate, but I call them menus. So what helps, statistically proven, what helps you close more sales is giving the customer more options. I always suggest on your estimate to have 3 to 4 different options. So let's say you may have your platinum, you may have your gold, you may have your silver, and your bronze. So giving that customer different options and making a recommendation on what you believe that's going to be the best solution for them based on what they told you, I believe that organically raises your chances of making those sales. And especially if you're skilled at it and presenting your menu, what type of word tracks are you using? Because all sales is being very consultative. How can I consult this customer into the best option? But you can only do that by finding out what the core needs are. Does that answer your question, Yash?
Yeah, definitely. So the key here is to have a really good presentation, and second, to give them options so they can actually choose. And obviously you gotta show them that, hey, this would be the best possible option for you. Yet you are having 3 options. Choose whatever you think is the right one. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and let me go through some word track on that, right? So let's say
Sure.
we have gold, silver, bronze, right? And I spent time with the customer. We had a great time. I built rapport with the customer. I found out what their core needs are. And that is key, right? Finding out what their core needs are, because you want to dig that out, right? And you want to bring that up in your presentation. And this is how you do it. I never teach tactics. I always teach skills, right? We want to work on our skills. We want to sharpen our skills. So here's a skill sharpening opportunity right here. So let's say we're going over gold, silver, bronze, and what I would say, hey, this is what's called my menu or my estimate. It's going to have 3 different options here. First is and let's say I'm going to suggest silver, right? I'll say, hey, this is my menu, this is my estimate, and we have gold up top. This is going to cover X, Y, and Z. But now when I get to silver, the one I want to recommend, here's the word track. I'm going to say to them, hey, this is what I recommend for you. And to be honest, this is what most customers in your situation, in terms of facing with your system, your ductwork, this is what they would typically go with. And this is the reason why. And what are those reasons why? Guess what? You found that out earlier in the sales process in terms of their core needs. And you're just bringing those core needs back to them. Hey, you mentioned that this is only going to be a temporary home after your daughter graduates. You're going to head across the country, move back to Colorado. And this is something that's going to hold you until that point happens. And then also, if you have any tenants in your house as well, this is going to make sure that they're covered and they're not calling you every week, because who wants their tenant calling you every week? You want a reliable unit, but you don't want the best top unit if it's not your forever home. And whatever reasons they told you, right, in terms of their needs, you're just bringing that back up in your presentation, and you're being consultative. You want to be a consultant. And by being a consultant, you're making, hey, this is what I recommend for you. And to be honest, customers in your situation, you're normalizing it now. Customers in your situation, this is what they typically go with. Mm-hmm. Psychologically, human beings are willing to make a decision that most of the crowd or most people would go with. They lean to, we tend to lean towards the majority vote. So if somebody is going right, guess what? We're going to go right. So if you normalize your option to that customer, they're going to be more prone to choose that, because especially if they trust you and you built rapport, they're going to be more prone to choose that option that you're recommending because you normalized it.
Makes perfect sense. Talking a bit more about trust and rapport, how exactly one could, build that, considering the company is pretty new. Let's say, it's been 6 months and the company has done pretty few jobs only. So how could that company build a rapport? Your suggestions on that?
Yeah, so I mean, you start with every single customer, right? Because what is rapport? Rapport is just building a quick relationship. So you want to make sure that you are, every customer that you're meeting with, this is what I coach rapport is king. Like, you think about a crown, right? Rapport is king. So whenever you're introduced to a customer, you're introducing yourself to a customer, the first thing you want to do is build rapport. You don't want to start off just asking questions about their system. You don't want to start off asking questions about their unit. You know why? Because we did not earn that yet. We got to think of rapport, especially our newer guys. We want to think of rapport as something, a rapport is something that it's an avenue that helps you earn the right to ask those type of questions. Because that customer, if you just go in the house and just start blasting them with questions, either one, they're not going to see you as you and they're going to see you as genuine, but also they're not going to answer those questions fully. Because at the end of the day, when you knock on their door, all they're thinking is that I got to spend money. You ring the doorbell, all they're hearing is ching ching. They realize they're going to have to spend money because you're at their house, you're at their home. So how do you break that down? How do you break their thought process down? Is by building rapport. You need to build rapport. Have to every single time.
Makes perfect sense. You talked about 4 objections initially, and we talked mainly about 2, pricing and trust or value, you could say. The other 2, need to think about it, and the other one I guess was I need to actually consult or talk with my partner, stuff like that.
Exactly.
While your formula stays, how do you integrate that formula into these 2 specific situations? Could you please elaborate on that?
Yeah, no, definitely. And spouse is a little bit different.
Yeah.
I'll touch on that. So spouse is probably the only one that's a little bit different, and you have to kind of think outside the box. If I'm at your house, Yash, and you're saying, hey, let me speak to my wife. I completely understand that. I got a wife too. We've been married for 10 years. How long you guys been married for? And you would tell me 15 years, right? And I would say, oh, I'm pretty sure you know your wife pretty well, huh? And you will say, yeah, I do. 15 years, you would think I know my wife well. And I was like, then I would say, since you know her so well, tell me, is there anything on here that she would have any objection to? You turn it back to them. And they're going to tell you like, yeah, you know what? She probably won't like this. Let's say the price. Or she's probably just a thinker. She needs some more time to think about it, right? Or they'll say, well, no, actually, Matter of fact, I don't see anything. I don't see anything she'll have any objection to. So, boom, from there you realize that that was just a smoke screen, and that 9 times out of 10 people tell you that's the smoke screen. That's the smoke screen 9 times out of 10. Let me speak to my husband. Let me speak to my wife. That's not the true objection. Now, to take that a step further, what you'll do is, after you confirm that their spouse wouldn't have any objection on what they're seeing, then you turn it back to them. Now, you tell me, is there anything on here that you would object to? And they'll tell you yes, no, maybe here, need some time to think, whatever. But either way, guess what? You drawn out the objection, whether it's a smoke screen or it's a true objection. And then from there, you're able to address it again with the restate, clarify, and close.
Mm-hmm.
And then with the time, that's going to be exactly just about the same thing. Spouse, again, that's different. You got to think outside the box on that. But with the time is, hey, I understand that. And again, what I would say is this. I would say, it looks like I didn't give you enough value. You don't see the value in what I have to offer. Let me explain this over again. Let me explain exactly what we're going to do step by step. Let me show you what silver includes. Let me show you what gold includes. And then from there, you close.
Makes perfect sense. Now talking a bit more about showing the value, or creating a presentation or stuff like that. What's the key strategies that you actually, whenever you consult with anyone and you see how they're creating presentation, what stuff they're having in that, what exact stuff do you tell them that, hey, you gotta make sure that you're having all these stuff, or you gotta check all these checklists, this so that you could get the best out of it? What's gonna be the key strategies for creating presentations?
Yeah, so most and foremost, I already mentioned it before, but you want to have options. And what I coach my clients to do is, don't say estimate, don't say quotes, say menu. This is my menu. Why? Because customers have a more positive connotation. Because Yash, when I tell you menu, what do you think about?
Yeah.
What do you think about when I question?
It's much different. It's not something. It doesn't seem like you're telling to sell me. It's much different than
Right.
what I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, because when you say menu, most people, what they think about is going to the restaurant, looking at what they can eat, right?
Yeah.
And they may ask the waiter or waitress, like, hey, what do you recommend for me to eat here, right? And that is the mindset and perspective that you want. So strategy one is have options. Call it menu. But a lot of it is, again, it starts, getting to the table is one thing. But setting yourself up for the presentation, that starts at the door. That starts when you're finding out the core needs and questioning. That starts when you're actually listening to the customer and what they're saying. And you're actually listening with your ears and your eyes. Because when you get to the table, here's the pro tip here, is that you want to have as much ammunition as possible. And how do you get the ammunition? Is by building rapport and asking the right questions, making that customer feel comfortable. Because you want that customer to see you as a consultant. The best consultant in any industry, by far, is going to be a doctor. You go to the doctor's office, what are they doing? You're consulting them. You have a problem. They're asking you the questions. They may have some small talk, which you build some rapport. And then from there, they're prescribing a remedy or a medicine to fix your issue. Our guys, we're the same way. When we get to the table, when we're going our presentation, we're in doctor mode. I tell my guys all the time, be a doctor of HVAC. You are a doctor of HVAC. So there's a mindset shift with strategy there. There's some practical steps with building rapport, because it starts before you get at the table. Because if you think you can just ask a bunch of questions and then just get to the table and make a presentation, your sales are going to be like this, up and down. It's never going to be consistently inclining. So it starts before you get to the table. So rapport, asking the right questioning, making sure that the customer is comfortable. And then the practical steps at the table, make sure you have multiple options. And then when you present those multiple options, make sure that you recommend and normalize that option if that is true with your client, with your customer base. Does that
Gotcha.
make sense?
Yeah, it seems so good. Let's assume, you have done all this and you have visited that and you haven't closed a sale yet. You talked about following up 5 times, when we were starting this podcast. So tell me, how exactly do you, reach out to them? What message do you actually send them? Stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. So here's a good way, right? And first and foremost, I'm all about setting yourself up for each step, right?
Mm-hmm.
That follow up is a different step in the sales process, but
Yeah.
if you're not able to close, you're not able to handle the objections and get over those, you need to set yourself up for the follow up. And before you leave, and you went over objection handling, you say to customer, "Hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, this is what I want to do." Because you want to establish control. You'll say, "This is what I want to do. I'm going to follow up with you Thursday, 10 a.m. How does that sound? Does that sound good?" All right. Yeah, it sounds fine. Boom. You follow up with them, right? And again, just to clarify, those 5 follow-ups you only continue those if you're not able to get in contact with the customer. The minute you get in contact with the customer, you're good. So let's say you call that first time, Thursday at 10 a.m., you're able to get in contact with them. The easy word track, and I get this from a guy named Jeremy Miner. He's really big on sales as well and following up. He would say it like this. You follow up the customer and you'll say, "Hey, I'm giving you a phone call. I know we went over that menu, but where do we go from here?" Or you can say, I like to say, "Hey, what's next? I know there's some value that you saw in what I presented just because of our interaction, but what's next? What's the next step here? When can we get you on schedule?" Real simple. Real simple.
Gotcha. So you're trying to know what's the objection in their head. That's actually, stopping them from actually moving forward. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and then also too with that, Yash, really you should have got that at the table, right? You should have
Yeah.
drawn that objection out at the table. And it's all about, I teach a lot about this goal clarity, right? What is your goal on each step of your sales process? You shouldn't leave that part of your sales process until you actually achieve that goal. So if you're in presentation and your goal is to close the customer and you're not able to close it, the next goal is to find the objection. Don't leave until you find the true objection, because you're cutting yourself short, and then from there you're not setting yourself up for that next step, which is the follow-up.
Makes sense. Ariel, could you please talk a bit about your sales process? I know you actually consult with a lot of HVAC companies, a lot of owners.
Yes.
So how does the sales process look like?
Yeah, I think it differs from company to company. So
Yeah.
first and foremost, you want to have, and it also differs if you're talking commercial or
Yeah.
if you're talking residential. But the first step in your sales process is that it's what I call the MIZ, right? You want to get in that mental end zone. Next is going to be approaching or engaging, right? You want to approach and you want to engage that customer. And within that approach and engaging, you're building rapport, you're educating them, you're setting expectation, you're giving them information, all that. And the second is going to be customization. You want to communicate to them, you want to be able to tailor exactly what they're looking for. And also you want to question, you want to uncover a lot of those core needs and how can I find out exactly what's going to work for that customer. And step 3 is going to be that presentation, right? You want to communicate, you want to consult, you want to suggest, you want to maybe even in that presentation, maybe even ask some more questions, and the whole tailoring aspect comes in that as well. And then step 5, easy enough, is just closing. You're closing. So within closing, you're getting confirmation. You're possibly setting up a follow-up if you're not able to close right then, and then your objection handling. And then last but not least is going to be the post-sale follow-up, which is very vital. You want to make sure that customer is at ease. You want to make sure that customer had a great experience with you. And then also, that's a really good place to get some referrals as well.
Gotcha. Makes perfect sense. You made a lot of complex things a lot simpler, and I really appreciate that, man.
Yeah,
To wrap up,
no
Ariel,
problem.
to wrap it up,
Yeah.
what would be your one piece of sales advice one should always remember?
Yes. So I want to give you two because I'm
Sure.
always stuck
Yeah.
between the two. Right? Is rapport is king. Always build rapport. Always build rapport. Always at all times. And how do you build rapport? You ask a question, you relate to that answer that they give you, or you ask another question. Simple as that. Number two is it's a mindset shift. It's going to be a doctor of HVAC. I already talked about that earlier.
Yeah.
Be a consultant. Be a doctor of HVAC because guess what? A lot of times people have a assumption in their mind that I don't want to get into sales or I don't want to be salesy because I'm pushy. But guess what? When you go to a doctor's office, you never feel like you're being sold
Yeah.
because you just feel like you're being helped. And that's the same mindset and the same perspective that we want to come to when we get the customer's house. We don't want them to feel like they're being sold, but just being helped, consulted. So be a doctor of HVAC.
Makes perfect sense. That was all from my side, Ariel. Do you have any other thing to add here? Anything?
No, I think we covered a lot.
Gotcha.
Covered a lot, and yeah, definitely want to respect your time. And again, thank you so much for having me on, Yash. Great time with
It
you.
was my pleasure, man. It was my pleasure. Anyone actually watching this, guys, I'll leave a link to Ariel's sales training in the description. So have a look at that. It's worth every single penny. I could assure you that. I could vouch for Ariel for this. And yeah, that was it for today's podcast. I hope you like this. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. And yeah, we'll see you on the next one. Till then, bye bye. Have a great day.
Awesome.